You're listening to Unfiltered, real talk about sex and love with Ashley
and Heather. And today we're going to be answering questions around the topic of I relapsed last weekend. And this can be really, I think that this is an interesting topic, and I'm glad that we've gotten questions about this so that we can help people figure out what to do next.
Yeah. And these are the kinds of things, I know even when we were writing Authentically You, it's like there's this line that you want to toe. I wanted to say tote. There's this line that you want to hold where you want to give examples that will help the person who's struggling know that they are not alone, and it's okay that you're a Christian and that this happened and that you're safe to talk about it, you know, here, without feeling like we're going too far, we're overexposing people, we're, giving people ideas. I mean, that seems to be tension of pastors, leaders, parents, of like, we want to let people know they're not alone, but we also sometimes are afraid to have these conversations. And so that's what I do like about our podcast, is that these are questions that people are asking us. These are things we hear women ask us. And so we want to give space to talk about that. I say all of that in trying to reduce shame, to say, I've been here. Like, this could be my question. And even the pick myself up the floor, I'm like, are we talking physically or or what here? But I've been here, and I remember specifically feeling so much shame because my pattern in addiction when I was sexually acting out with people looked different than my pattern with masturbation. That acting out with people was like a once a year thing. I was in church, I was serving, I was doing all the things. What I didn't know is I was really white knuckling it, and I didn't know what was driving me trying to meet my relational needs in a sexual way. Me trying to feel validated, loved, accepted, wanted, desired. The way that I was trying to achieve that was acting out with people. And I didn't have a good dating plan or boundaries. And so I would get myself in these situations where I had full intentions on making the right choices, and then I'd end up staying too late, or I'd end up drinking and find myself in this situation again. Even some of my friends, bless their heart, I still love them all, but they would manipulate my Christianity. And so they'd be like, if you come out and drink with us tonight, we'll go to church with you in the morning. I'm like, this is win-win. I'm going to go out and drink with them, and then they're going to come to church, and I would never end up at church the next day. And so just all of that awareness was lacking for me. What I would say is the Pure Desire podcast, we did an episode called The Crash Site Analysis, and I was on that episode. I would suggest listening to that full episode, because then you'll know how to use the crash site tool, and then you can create yourself, you can go through the crash site analysis and evaluate what happened last weekend and really dissect it. And it's called that because, like, after a plane crashes, I mean, this is a Dr. Ted thing, right? Our founder, he's a jet fighter pilot. After the plane crashes, you evaluate what happened so that it doesn't happen again.
Right.
And so go to that episode, listen to the full thing, print the tool, and start doing the work. But the only other thing I want to say here is I just hope that you can release that shame, even in hearing us say, you don't have to feel ashamed of this. Yes, you made mistakes. Yes, there's probably some guilt over what happened, but this does not make you a bad person. This does not eliminate you from God's best. This does not disqualify you as a servant. This doesn't disqualify you as a future spouse for somebody. I remember feeling like I was, when the pastor was talking about getting married and saving yourself for marriage and having a head of the household and a Christian husband, I just always felt like he's not talking to me. He's not talking to me because I'm not a virgin and I'm like disqualified from God's wonderful men out there that he's preparing for all the people who behaved sexually. That is not true. That's a lie. And so just do the work. Join a group if you're not in group. Have a counselor if you don't have a counselor, but you need to get rid of the shame and start sharing this with your group members. If you don't have a group, join a group. You can go to our website and look for an Unraveled group or an Authentically You group and just start getting this out, and then using our tools to figure out how to turn that car around faster before you end up where you ended up last weekend.
Yeah, and that is really good. It leads to this next question about who do I tell about my relapse? And that's one of the greatest things about being in group with other people, because you're going to be in group with other women who this is probably part of their story as well. You know, none of us are perfect. None of us live the perfect life. I mean, even though we always would love that, but it just is not reality. And so you're in group, and usually we recommend that you at least have two people in your life who know everything there is to know about you, and those are going to be the people that you call when you relapse for sure. And then if you are in group, then part of your accountability is to check in with members of your group throughout the week, and even just to say, how are you doing? How are you feeling? What are you working on? What's your commitment to change this week? You know, all of those kind of things will happen naturally. But what we don't want you to do is, you know, hide and feel ashamed and feel like you can't tell anybody about this, or that you're the worst person in the world, because that's only going to then make things worse for you and make things worse in the way you think about yourself. And because we all make mistakes, it just is part of the human experience. And so, but having safe relationships that you can call and say, you know what, I blew it last weekend, and you know, not only I blew it last weekend, but can you help me figure out a strategy so that this doesn't happen again?
Yeah. And then hopefully those people in your group and your trusted accountability people and the people you're reaching out to, this is the opportunity right now, because this relapse, whether it was with porn or acting out sexually with a person, this is only a week old. So this is the time to get it down on paper. What was I feeling? What was I thinking? Where was the point of no return? You know, so, and to have your friend say, this is the point where we could have made a different choice and it still would have been easy to make that choice, versus once everything's starting to get turned on and it's hard to stop mid flight or whatever. I'm like, where's my language? Because then next time you can say, at this point, I can text my accountability person, and say, hey, I'm feeling triggered, or I'm starting to push the boundaries, I'm starting to edge or whatnot. Here's my plan. I'm going to check in with you after the date, or I'm going to check in with you after I, go on a run and come back and reset my environment, and you can have that person. So that leads into our next question, what tools can I use to get back to restoration? I already talked about the crash site analysis. I also think the FASTER scale is huge, because then we're not, oh no, I all of a sudden relapse. But the FASTER scale is something where you track your behaviors and thought patterns and habits throughout the week, daily, maybe even twice a day if you need to, and just highlight anything that you're doing, and you'll be able to see that you're creeping closer toward relapse. And so all of these tools, we have full episodes on our main Pure Desire podcast. So you can look up the FASTER scale, the crash site analysis, the recovery action plan, and then the 3 circles, which I've talked about. And so using all of those tools, but starting, since it's fresh after a relapse, start with the crash site analysis to figure out what happened. And then I would say, do a recovery action plan and create a recovery action plan. Like, maybe you've realized you can't handle watching rated R movies because they always lead to acting out. Maybe you've learned you can't handle being on certain social media sites because they always lead to porn. Maybe you've learned you can't handle going out dancing because it always leads to hooking up. And so I've talked about how when I married John, one of his boundaries was, you can't go out anymore. I mean, you can, but I'm not going to be here. So I was like, no, don't leave me ever. And so I didn't go out at all for like 10 years. And so that might be something that you need to put in place. Like, every time I do A, B happens. So maybe on your recovery action plan, we're not going to do A anymore. We're going to find something else to do instead of A, because A always leads to B. And so the recovery action plan, and then again, that FASTER scale, just to keep that awareness of where I'm at every day, and being able to share with your accountability people where you're at, and share your recovery action plan with your accountability people or your group, so that when you do have a relapse, they can say, well, what's on your recovery action plan? Let's get that out. Let's get the crash site analysis out. Let's use your tools. And that's the beauty of having a group.
Right. Because they're really just there to give you the support you need when you need it, but also when you can't see it.
Right.
You know, which is so, so helpful sometimes, because if we keep ending up, like you were saying, that A equals B every time, and we get stuck in this rut of A, B, A, B, A, B, then we need somebody else to say, you know what, this isn't working for you, but I think that if we were to do this, then that you might find success in this, you know, situation. So I think that sometimes that is so great to have other people who can help us to see our blind spots.
Yeah. And even just, I mean, sometimes we know we're stuck in a rut and we're not yet there ready to change, you know? I remember that a couple summers ago when I was texting you, like, I can feel my brain is just in like an addict rut of always needing something. And it just feels very like hard to get out of this rut. And it's like, I was aware of it. I wasn't quite at the point where I wanted to make some big changes. And hopefully you can be before you know, crash, because that's often when people decide to make the changes. But when you're noticing that you're kind of in that space of like, looking for something, searching to feel good, needing something, that's a great time to get the tools out again and reevaluate and see if there's any tweaking you can do to keep yourself on the straight and narrow. But with all of that said, you do not have to have shame over what you've done. It's not a surprise to God, and He's not up there, you know, ready to discipline you. It's just He and, you know, we want the best for you. And so get into group and start using this as a learning experience and moving forward in a way that's healthier next time. Thank you for joining the conversation today. If you can think about it, we should be talking about it. Please send your questions to unfiltered@puredesire.org. If you liked this episode today, subscribe and share it with friends, and please leave us a review so people can find us.